Priya got a job offer for $72,000. She said thank you and accepted it the same day. Daniel got the exact same offer, same company, same role, same week. He asked for one thing before saying yes, and that one sentence was worth more than either of them realized. 15 years later, the gap between them isn't a few $1,000s. It's enough to buy a house in cash. And almost nobody sees it coming, because the moment it happens looks completely unremarkable. Priya and Daniel are hired into the same role at the same company in the same month. Same degree, same 3 years of prior experience, same starting point. HR sends them both an offer letter. $72,000 base salary, standard benefits, standard start date. Priya reads it, feels genuinely happy, this is more than her last job paid, and replies within the hour. I accept. Thank you so much for this opportunity. She's not being naive. She's being grateful, and honestly, most people would do exactly what she did. Daniel reads the same offer. He's happy too. But before replying, he writes one line back. I'm excited about this role. Based on my research into market rates for this position, would there be flexibility to bring the base to $78,000? That's it. No aggressive ask, no ultimatum, no leverage from a competing offer. Just a polite, specific question. The recruiter comes back 2 days later. $76,000. Daniel accepts. The difference on day one, $4,000 a year. It doesn't sound dramatic. It sounds like the kind of gap that evens out eventually. It doesn't. Salaries don't just add up year over year. They compound, the same way an investment portfolio compounds. Except, almost nobody treats it that way. Every raise you get is a percentage of your current salary, not a fixed dollar amount. So a small gap at the start doesn't stay small. It grows every single year, quietly, in the background. Let's run the actual numbers. Assume both Priya and Daniel get the same annual raises going forward, a standard 3% cost of living increase most years, with a slightly larger 5% bump every third year when they get promoted. Identical performance, identical career paths, identical everything except that starting number. Year 1, Priya makes $72,000. Daniel makes $76,000. By year 3, after the same raises applied to different bases, Priya is at roughly $76,400. Daniel is at $80,700. The gap has grown from $4,000 to about $4,300. Small increase, but notice what's happening. The gap isn't shrinking. It's not even staying flat. It's growing. By year 5, Priya is around $81,900. Daniel is around $86,500. Gap, roughly $4,600. By year 10, Priya is at approximately $99,200. Daniel is at approximately $104,900. The gap has widened to about $5,700. Nearly $1,700 more than where it started, purely from compounding on a bigger base. By year 15, Priya's salary has grown to roughly $126,300. Daniel's has grown to roughly $133,500. The annual gap is now $7,200, almost double the original $4,000 difference. Add up every year's difference across the full 15 years, and the total lost earnings for Priya are somewhere between $70,000 and $80,000. Not because she made a bad decision, because she made no decision at all. Everyone talks about the first negotiation like it's a one-time event, a single conversation that either happens or doesn't. It's not a single event. It's the base multiplier for every raise, every bonus calculation, every future negotiation for the rest of that career. You're not negotiating one number. You're negotiating the foundation that every future number gets built on top of. Priya's story doesn't end at "she never negotiated." 2 years in, Priya realizes what happened. She's talked to a coworker, compared notes, and figured out there's a gap she didn't know existed. So she does something a lot of people are afraid to do. She goes back and negotiates, not for a new job, but for a raise at her current one. This is where most people freeze. The fear is real. What if they say no? What if it damages the relationship? What if it makes you look ungrateful? Here's what the actual data says, and it's not what most people expect. Companies budget for retention raises specifically because replacing an employee costs them far more than giving one a raise. Recruiting, onboarding, and training a replacement typically costs between 50 and 200% of that employee's annual salary. A manager approving a $6,000 raise to keep a good employee is, from the company's perspective, an easy decision compared to losing that person and starting from zero. Priya doesn't know this exact math when she walks into the conversation, but she does the one thing that matters most. She brings data, not emotion. She pulls together 3 data points: her performance reviews, which have been strong, 2 comparable job postings in her market showing the going rate for her role is now $84,000, not $76,400, and a clear, calm statement of what she's asking for. Based on my performance and current market data, I'd like to discuss bringing my base to $84,000. Her manager doesn't say yes immediately. Nobody ever does. He says he needs to check with HR and get back to her. A week later, she gets $81,000. Not the full ask, but a significant correction. In one conversation, Priya closes more than half the gap that took 2 years to open. This matters because it proves something important. The compounding effect works in both directions. Just like a small gap early on grows into a large one over time, closing a gap early also compounds in your favor for every year that follows. Priya's decision to renegotiate at year 2 doesn't just fix year 2. It resets the base for every raise for the next 13 years. Let's rerun the math with this correction included. By year 10, instead of $99,200, she's at approximately $105,700, essentially catching up to Daniel's trajectory almost entirely. By year 15, she's at roughly $134,800, actually slightly ahead of Daniel's $133,500, because her year 2 correction was proportionally larger than his single starting point advantage. One conversation, 2 years late, more than reversed a $70,000 gap. So why doesn't everyone do this? Most people genuinely don't know they're underpaid because salary information is deliberately opaque. Most workplaces discourage employees from discussing pay with each other. Even people who suspect they're underpaid avoid the conversation because it feels confrontational. The discomfort of one conversation feels bigger in the moment than a compounding loss that's invisible until you actually calculate it. There's a widespread myth that negotiating, especially negotiating a raise rather than a new job offer, will backfire. In reality, documented, well-researched, professionally delivered asks rarely damage a relationship. The employees who get penalized are almost always the ones who ask emotionally without data, or who issue ultimatums instead of requests. There's also a layer specific to the very first negotiation, the one Daniel did and Priya didn't. Most companies build a negotiation room on purpose. The first offer is rarely the actual ceiling of what they're authorized to pay. Hiring managers typically have a range, and the initial number is often somewhere in the lower half of that range, precisely because they expect some candidates to counter. When you accept immediately, you're not just leaving money on the table, you're leaving money that was specifically budgeted for someone to ask for. None of this means negotiating always works, or that every ask gets approved. Sometimes the answer is genuinely no, the budget isn't there, The range is fixed, the timing is wrong. But here's the actual asymmetry worth understanding. The downside of asking and getting a no is a slightly awkward 30-second conversation. The downside of not asking, applied across a 15, 20, 30-year career, is tens of thousands of dollars that compound away silently every single year. The same mechanism that makes investing early so powerful, just working in reverse. Priya and Daniel ended up in almost the same place, but only because Priya caught the gap and corrected it. Most people never do the math that would show them the gap exists in the first place. They just feel, vaguely, like they're doing fine, the same way Priya felt fine accepting $72,000. Right up until she compared notes and realized fine wasn't the same as fair. So here's the question worth sitting with. When was the last time you actually compared your salary to the current market rate for your role, not what you were told when you were hired, but what the market is paying right now? Because that gap, if it exists, isn't a one-time number. It's compounding in the background whether you look at it or not. If this changed how you think about your next raise conversation or your next offer letter, subscribe to Marcus Finance. We break down the hidden math behind the financial decisions you face every day.